At Roundglass, we bring you the best teachers from around the world and we journey together on our path of holistic well being. Today, it's my honor to spotlight two strong, smart, resilient teachers at Roundglass. They share a unique wisdom, having transformed their lives beyond their own traumatic past. Now they're dedicated to easing the pain and suffering of others. I'm Prakriti Poddar. I am the Global Head of Mental Health and Wellbeing here at Round Glass. I'm very excited about this conversation, especially because it's focusing on finding strength in traumatic times with Vimalasara and Yael Shy. Yael Shy is an adjunct professor in the Wagner School of Public Administration at NYU. She is the author of an award winning book, What Now? Meditation for Your 20s and Beyond. She is the founder of Mindful NYU, the largest campus wide mindfulness initiative in the United States. She joins us virtually from New York City. Hello.
Hi,
Vimla,
happy to be here.
hi. It's amazing to have you. Vimalasara is a mindfulness teacher and a trauma specialist who's been practicing Buddhism for over 30 years. They have authored 10 books, and one of them is Detox Your Heart, Meditations for Emotional Trauma. Welcome, Vimalasara from London.
Hi.
The life mission of these two beautiful people is really to offer solutions born out of their own recovery and to mobilize a gift of insight into a positive journey for seekers in well-being. Dealing with traumatic times is our topic of today. And what we were talking about just before this started was will we touch upon the trauma that's taking place globally? And I think that it's important for us to move from maybe a global context to a society or a community context and then to a personal context. So that's really how this conversation will move. But the unrest that we're experiencing in the world today is something that we are all part of. And one of the things I was thinking about, because I was really thinking about, should we really talk about this? It's so cultural. Our experience of trauma is cultural. What we experience as trauma in different nations is really built upon our exposure to trauma. And I really want to start with sort of having this conversation, not only about the trauma that's taking place, but the various experiences of this trauma and how it is displayed amongst people. And Yael, you can focus on the youth since you do have insight into that age group. And Vimalasara, since you work with trauma, and this is a very important topic for you because it is your life's mission and purpose. I want to leave the conversation a little bit free flowing, so we can all sort of talk about this experience of trauma in our own world and through our own insights and through the people that we work with. So, Yael, starting with you, if you'd like to sort of lay down the foundations of what this world trauma is representing in the people that you work with.
Yes, so one of my primary people kind of demographics that I interact with and work with are people in their 20s and people in college. And all of the research, especially since the pandemic really sprung, but even before, it has been showing that the mental health numbers writ large for people in their 20s and really in their 20s have been going down, down, down. The numbers around anxiety and depression and loneliness have been going up, up, up. This is for the last 10 years and then exacerbated by the pandemic. And so these are kind of traumatic times. There's all kinds of other stuff at play. There's like the global traumas that people are experiencing, and then there's also a lot of stuff in the world right now, between them reckoning with climate change and climate disaster. And then there's also social media addiction that is very real for this population that are putting serious strains on mental health. And the only thing that makes me not so depressed about these numbers and about, not just the research, but really seeing them in person and seeing the students that I work with just destroyed by what is going on in their bodies and their minds is this research that is also showing that the stigma around mental health and getting help for mental health and mindfulness and healing solutions has all gone down. The stigma is going down. And so I think younger generations are more and more likely to both seek therapy, seek counseling, and seek meditation and healing modalities, which is really good news because they need it and because there is so much possibility there for transformation and healing. So that's at least some of the good news with a lot of the painful news.
I mean, I was actually, I'm very focused on mental health, and thank you for bringing that up. And the youth is very vulnerable to mental health illnesses, as we're
Yeah.
saying, and challenges. But the surprising thing is when I was actually doing this and only doing mental health, it was at 37%. People,
Mm.
I mean, young people from 18 to 34 actually going through mental health challenges. But now, just before our conversation, I thought, well, I wonder what the rates are right now. And it was at 49.5%. I was like, wait, that's 1 in 2 people. That's one
Yeah.
in two people. And yet there is um, there is exposure, and they have awareness that they can go seek help, but it's still 1 in 2. And I know that, Vimalasara, you've been actively involved in trauma and working with it, like I said before. But you're also very politically aware of world challenges going on. So I would love you to share your point of view on what really is not only happening, but what is the trend and what are people really going through.
Mm. Well, firstly, I really wanted to keep the spotlight on the youth, as I've done a lot of work working in the youth, going into schools and doing conflict resolution and anger management. And one of the things that I was discussing with my nephew yesterday, my nephew is 18, and the whole gun crime and knife crime, there's a lot of knife crime in the UK. And I said to him, I said, you may disagree with me, but I said, I've been in many conversations with young people, and one of the things that they say need to be banned, it's not the social media, it's the games, it's the video games.
Mm.
The video
Mm.
games the video games are traumatic. Like,
Yep.
Mm.
and it's not surprising, when we hear more and more that 18-year-olds are getting hold of assault guns. I'm thinking they've been living in this virtual world. And in the US, it's so easy to go out and be able to purchase these things, and that they've lost a sense of the real world and the
Yep.
virtual world. So
Yep.
for
Mm.
me, if we're really wanting to look at how do we protect our young people, that new generation, and protect them from trauma, to me, it's not just the focus on the guns, it's the focus on what are we filling our young people's heads
Oh,
with?
100%.
And we need to really be looking at some of these video games. So just really wanted to put that into the field. Secondly, I want to quote from Resma Menakam, because he has this fantastic acronym when he talks about trauma. The acronym is HIP, which stands for historical trauma, as we were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
that there's always trauma. I mean, Prakriti, you actually said history is trauma. Okay,
Yep.
so there
Mm.
is this historical trauma, and then the I is for institutional trauma. If you think of the institutions, I mean, if you're somebody who is born differently abled and you have to navigate this world, that is traumatic, because the world isn't designed for people who are physically different, who are disabled. It's just not designed for them. And of course, when we look at institutional trauma, we can look at the systemic racism within different institutions. And then he talks about the persistent trauma, the trauma that persists. We think about things that just haven't changed, the trauma towards women. I mean, you know, so many, if you look at the statistics of women who have been sexually assaulted, sexually abused, if you look at the statistics of transgendered women who have been, and it's actually said that the worst crimes, the worst assault is towards Latinx, African descent, Hispanic transgendered women. And then, of course, there is the personal trauma, and none of us can avoid personal trauma, no matter which cultural background, racial background, or social background that you come from. I mean, even coming out into this world is traumatic. And I think to me, when we look at the optimism, it was really lovely, Yael, saying, you know, that there is hope, because the young people have access to meditation, young people have access to therapy and mindfulness. And for me, I have optimism is because we are more and more talking about trauma. I mean, once upon a time, racial trauma has only become part of our language since the George Floyd moment. Like, really?
Wow, yeah.
And so already, I was talking with my sister yesterday and just saying we have to realize that actually when we come into relationship with each other, we are bringing our traumatic experiences with us. And another thing that Resmaa Menakem says, and I'll take a pause, is that black body trauma and there's white body trauma. And when we come together, that polarization that can happen.
Yeah. You've said so many things because you went through 3 points. So I want to break it down first. Let's talk about the video games and the desensitization. And Yale has 2 kids, I have 3 kids, and I'm always battling with this with my children as well. And I remember being in my own room and I can hear my kid saying, "Oh my God, I'm dead now." And then he says, okay, I have to like revive myself. And I'm like, you know what? This is like actually, and you're too young to realize that that is, a game. And I'm like, stop playing these kind of violent games. You're not allowed to play these games. Um, and then I realized that the desensitization already set in because the way he communicates with his peers, they're on the same calls. They're gaming, but they have a, I don't remember what it's called, but like it's another chat. So they're having this chat and they're really communicating in violent ways. And I'm like, can you please not use this kind of violent language? And he's like, no, it's just fun. I'm like, no, it's not fun. This is not fun. You don't understand that everything that you're putting into your system from the environment and from just your communication is actually causing something within you. How do we get parents to understand what they're dealing with? Because remember, they've been exposed. It's almost like the internet, right? You're exposed to it, but we don't have the hygiene for it, right? Parents are exposed to children who are with peer groups whose life this is. They'll come back from school early, not to spend time with the family, but to get onto their games, right? And it's like, 1 second, you have a regiment. Now, parents have become dual income families. They don't have the time. Post the child is 13, they don't really monitor children that well. And then if they monitor children that well, it's helicopter parenting, and then there's a whole lot of trauma that comes out of that, right? So it's like, where's the balance? How do you teach this kind of hygiene to a child? I know you said you're working with schools and universities. How do we expose it even more, where we understand where a child takes the step? Because no matter how much a parent tells them, the child has to be game to actually utilize that hygiene formula for themselves. And parents have to be aware of how to navigate this situation to be able to not be dictatorial, but to be a partner in this change that needs to be brought about. Anybody, both of you have the skill to take this question. So if you want, Yale, you can start with what you've been doing if you've been working on this at all.
Yeah, my kids are still very young, so we haven't quite gotten there in terms of that conversation. They're or 4 and 5. But I think what my heart says about it is that, I mean, it's obviously very complicated and difficult. Um, and I think there's a conversation to be had about, like, how do you regulate, or do you regulate the actual usage of the games themselves? But I feel like it's also the harder question to ask of us parents is, where are we modeling that kind of addictive
Exactly.
behavior, that kind of
Yes.
exposure for ourselves of this,
Yes.
of the traumatic content, maybe
Mm.
through the news that's always on, always scrolling, or our own
Yes.
addictions to our phones that we, at least for me, I'm
Exactly.
definitely
Yeah.
addicted. And I
Yeah.
think that our kids can see that. And so it's going to be very hard to talk to our kids, to enforce things for our kids, if we are not, like, really looking hard at our own behavior and saying, like, this is not the hygiene I want in my own life, and I'm going to model for you a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I'm so glad that that's come out of the mouth of a parent, because that was
Yeah.
exactly that I was going to say, and I'm not a parent, and so it's very easy for me to say that. But exactly, it's like, what are we modeling? You know,
Yeah.
sometimes you can go into the house where there's kids, and the television's on, and they're eating the food, or as you say, the parents constantly on the telephone, and we are just modeling this. So
Yeah.
really, if we want change in the household, we have to change ourselves as parents. It's not about trying to moderate, to micromanage the child's behavior. We have to show something different. And then I think that there's something about, you know, children doing outside activities. Yeah. Like, even if it's going for a walk, or biking, or being part of a team, hockey, football, soccer, but having some outdoor activities which get them outside of the house, because these things take place inside the house, in their room. Okay. And also, I'd
Yes.
say it's to for parents to think about, what age do you want to give a child a cell phone? And if you do give a child a cell phone, you can actually put bars on it so that they can't access the internet, that they only need to be able to use their mobile phone or their cell phone in a case of emergencies.
Yeah, and if I can just add on to that, as I think that's really wise about the getting outside, same thing about ourselves, like, as a society. In you know I can't speak to every society. I know this is a global app, but in terms of the society that I live in, like, the bonds of in real life community and getting out
Mm,
there and being with other people, it's very hard to find those communities.
mm,
If you're religious,
mm,
they're way. Many people are not. It's hard to find community and people to be with in
mm,
real life, not on a screen.
mm,
And it's that same modeling of, like, what do we believe is healthy for ourselves,
mm.
healthy. And it's just going to take some work to nest yourself with other people in real life.
Yeah, and then there's, of course, you who are raising young children, and I want to come to those adolescents who have been really traumatized and impacted by the pandemic. One of my nephews
Yes.
has just finished university. I spoke to him, he rang me up, told me I finished, waiting for results. We had a conversation. He says, I want a job where I can work from home, because that's just what
Mm.
he's learned. It doesn't,
wow, yeah.
you know, to stay at
It's
home, and the
taken away so
impact that,
much.
yes.
It's taken away so much, and it's sad. I see it in people. I work a lot with people as well, and I was working a lot with people in India, mostly, and become it's almost become a norm for them, and it's difficult when you take them out. They've lost the social skills that they need to have, and bonding for them has become bonding which is over a medium versus like face-to-face bonding. I see some people I see some children who come over to my house as well to be with my kid. When I start talking to them, they're unable to kind of look me in the eye and have a conversation with me because they're used to being on a screen and not really, face to face interacting, and not with adults. They're interacting with their own peers, so they've lost that sort of skill in a sense, and it's hard to see. I mean, I actually, during this pandemic, because the I couldn't handle what would happen to my child. So I put him in boarding school. I'm like, you will be around children and around adults, and you'll be in a safe environment. But not so many people can do that. People can't do
Mhm.
that. But I mean, I'm privileged to be able to do that. But it's saved, or like even what I did when Vimalasara, when I met you in person. I moved my kids from India to Canada because like one of the things I didn't want my children to go through is a lockdown, because I knew it
Mm.
would lock down their emotional growth. I knew it would lock down their spiritual growth. I knew it would lock down their social growth, their community growth, and exactly what you're talking about. So I took a very hard decision of moving out of India to be able to provide that for my children. But it's a huge problem. But the trauma is now being set in parents who are unable to navigate this. And I think, yes, of course, the children are going through this. They don't even recognize the impact of the trauma that is going to set in because of this. But I think parents are going through that trauma on a regular basis, and also going through the guilt of not being able to shift their children and put them back on the path of like of community well-being, in a sense of holistic well-being. And I think that's something that we will need to deal with, and I'm sure that you will go through, because while you're working with children, you will be working with their gatekeepers, in a sense. It could be parents, it could be teachers, it's everybody. We had somebody who came on last time who is an educator, and she's dealing with children all the time, but using social media to really teach effective ways to communicate, effective ways to communicate, so that they can have a sort of an emotionally healthy life. But I think it's very key at this point to understand that the trauma is going to be both sides. It's in parents, it's in educators, it's with the children, and because we're all part of the same ecosystem. But I want to shift a little bit to your own personal journeys and what really got you into doing the work that you do, and what is it that was a real trigger that made you realize and recognize that you and your purpose was needed, and the mission that you were on was essential to bring to the world to sort of ease life. And I love your courses that we have on Round Glass, because they really have brought so much value to the people that have received it. But I want to really start with your journey and then go into the choices that you've made. So Vimlasara, if you can start with sort of what got you here to doing this fantastic work that you really do at this point.
Yeah, it's life. life life got me here. And it's so interesting because when I was young, it was all about having lots of money, fast cars, and just what I saw as important began to fade away. I just really saw that these things didn't really bring me much happiness. And so where I'm here now is just realizing, what is life about? I think when we're young, we have this idea of what life will be like. Actually, when I think of young Black men, and it's really tragic for me to say that I really do feel that, or believe that, think that a lot of young Black men think they'll only live to 30, just because of the way that they're policed, and just
Wow.
because of what happens within their peer groups. And so that thing of living fast, and actually myself, I never thought I would live beyond 40. And it was catastrophic when I turned 40. It was like, oh my God, what do I do now? And I would say, really, what got me to this point is my practice of mindfulness, is my practice of Buddhism. I was fortunate, again, I was in the right place where I had people of color around me who were meditating. So in my 20s, in my mid 20s, I was exposed to that, and actually could really see how something like meditation, something like mindfulness and Buddhism was transformative. And I would say that it was mindfulness that saved my life. I think, as many people have heard me say, that mindfulness is my Prozac. I really do believe that if I'd come to mindfulness much later in life, I would have most probably have had to been on medication. But because mindfulness came in my life at such a young stage, that I'm in this place where I can be of service. So I think I'll just end with this, that actually for me, life is about being of service. What else? We're born and we die. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
like, and it's to help people to live. How do we help all of us to live together in this crazy world?
it's so true. And Yael, a little bit about you.
Uh, I mean, I think I just kind of came out the way that I am, was very, very, very anxious from a very young age, and just kind of some family. By the time I got to my 20s, it was really, really deep levels of suffering. So I was having kind of panic attacks almost every day. I was really incapacitated by my anxiety, my loneliness, and my suffering. And as Vimalasara said, the mindfulness kind of Buddhism and mindfulness really transformed my life and really saved my life. And I guess I'm in that same camp that I didn't know I could make a job of this. I didn't train, like from a young age to be a teacher and a coach. Um, and it's just been like the gift of my life that I've been able to do that and connect with other people who are suffering.
That's so
There's
beautiful
one
because your
more
gifts
thing.
have, so your gifts
Sorry, there
have
was one
really.
more.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Vimalasara.
Sorry, I was saying there was one more thing that I wanted to say to that. That actually, getting to this point, for me, it was like, well, it's not just about me, is it? It's not, how can I really be happy if people all around me are suffering? So in a
Yeah.
way, my liberation is tied up in your liberation. It's not just about my freedom and my liberation, which is why I'm here doing this work, to be of service to others. Sorry, Prakriti.
That's amazing. I think there's a saying that says, fill your own cup and then allow it to overflow, because with a place of emptiness you
Mm,
cannot give. So that's mindfulness. You have to be in that space and then be able to transfer that. Um, which I love. I love the work that you guys are doing. And, with just a couple of minutes left, actually just a minute left, can you please share a piece of wisdom that we can leave our listeners with?
mm,
I guess I would just say that just as we are in traumatic times, but there is this concept of post-traumatic growth, and that is possible. And it's going to take all of us to unlearn and to shift on an individual level and a societal level. But I think it's worth it to create and live in a different kind of a world, which we desperately, desperately need.
mm.
Thank you.
I would say, just coming to the personal, as you said, landing and ending on the personal, that if you have experienced physical trauma, sexual trauma, just know that you're not responsible for that. Just really know you're not responsible for that. And just yeah, that you are love, you are divine, and that actually nobody has the right to sexually assault us or physically assault us. You didn't do anything. Good people don't take advantage of people. Good people take care of people. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so brilliant. Good people take care of people, and I hope that everybody who's watching us takes something away from here and mobilizes this growth towards themselves. That's all the time we have today, unfortunately. And this is a beginning of a very important conversation that we would continue, and hopefully we can all get together again. Yael Shy is offering a live virtual 4-week course that is called What Really Matters: Living Life with No Regrets, to clarify and center your purpose. It begins on the 8th of June. Roundglass is premiering a new podcast with Nitishanti, who's also a teacher that you've seen many times on our app and on our website. That is on the 9th of June. Please tune in for that because it is fantastic. In fact, one of the episodes has Vimalasara in it as well. It's called The Stories We Tell. Next week's episode, Find Purpose Through Service, features Vimalasara. So please check it out. You can also search the Roundglass Living app and website, roundglass.com, to find Yael's and Vimalasara's course, along with all the on-demand live sessions that we've had here. Until next week, I'm Prakriti Poddar. Thank you so much.